Hey everybody, it's Helena and I'm here with my husband Tom today.
Hey everyone.
And in this live stream, we're going to be sharing 5 things that make you so valuable to a man in his eyes and in his life that he just sees you as that one special woman that he can't wait to commit to and that he never wants to live without. If this is your first time to my channel, go ahead and click the button to subscribe. Welcome. We're so happy. We're actually starting a couple minutes early, which doesn't usually happen. So say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we will try to get to as many as we can at the end. Hey guys. Okay, good. Everyone can hear us and see us and everything. And also make sure to stay to the end of this video because Tom said something the other day in a podcast episode that we recorded together that I'd never heard him say before about how he knew that I was a quality person that he wanted to commit to. And he knew that pretty early on in our dating and in the early stages of our relationship. So we'll share that as like a little bonus tip at the end after we share these 5 things. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for saying hi in the chat. And let's get started. Is there anything you want to say about to kind of pre-frame this? And then also I want to give my 5 tips before we start for a man to even qualify. Should I start there or do you want anything you want to say? Okay. So obviously this isn't about trying to prove yourself to a man, or if there's a guy and he's emotionally unavailable, you're trying to like win him over and show him what a great partner or wife you would be. If you guys have seen some of my other videos, you know that, that's not what my work is all about. It's not about trying to win a man over or show him how great the two of you would be together. So for a man to even qualify to get put into this category where you're considering, getting into a long-term commitment with him, I would say a few things need to be happening. I'll share 5 things of my own, just right off the top of my head. Number 1, his energy has to be coming towards you consistently. Number 2, he has to be reliable and dependable. He follows through. His words and actions line up. Number 3, he is moving things forward. Number 4, he's investing in you, right? He's not just showing up on your phone once a month or once every few weeks, right? He's actually investing with you. He's putting that time and effort in. Number 5, you feel good about yourself in his presence, both when he's right in front of you and when he's not. You feel really comfortable and secure. He doesn't stir up all this, these feelings of anxiety or, not knowing where you stand with him. So if a man fits into, has those qualifications and things feel good and you're moving forward, then we can move into this next step where we're going to share these 5 things. How did I do with that? I just kind of came up with that. Anything you want to say before we get started?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to kind of preface this, we were discussing this, Helena and I were talking about this topic one night, I think last week, and you had asked me the question, what are some things that sort of differentiate somebody to a guy and see that, make that guy see that person as somebody whom he'd like to maybe spend the rest of his life with versus a short-term relationship. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of thinking, I came up with this list of a few things that I think generally differentiate a person. This is not necessarily a comprehensive list, but I think generally if these things are true, the guy could start to envision this as a person whom he'd like to spend more time with than just a couple weeks or a few months or something. And the first thing was that that he feels like you fully understand him and that you appreciate some things about him that maybe not everyone does, or maybe some people might not even see. And we were talking about some examples, and one of the things that came up was, I'm a drummer and a percussionist, and I have been my whole life. So I often, from a young age, will tap on tables or on the floor or, anything I can find with pencils or utensils or anything like that. And so I kind of grew up my entire life with this constant rhythm kind of going on in my life. But I frequently heard things like, stop doing that, that's annoying, and you were the first person who actually told me that you liked that, that you liked, you kind of told you that I was in my element and that I was around, that I was present.
I love it. Yeah.
And I don't know, you mentioned something else about that too, that I hadn't started doing that.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, like, when it means that you're home and you're here, when you're not there, I missed it's kind of silent without him kind of like drumming on his mouse and his keyboard or whatever he's doing. Yeah, I think it took you like at least 6 months for you to start doing that. It's not like the first time he came over on our first date, he was drumming on everything. It probably, I don't know, did it take you a while to feel comfortable enough to open? Is that what it was?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. So yeah, I mean, that's something that I really love about him. Now, I wasn't trying to show him that I appreciate him. I wasn't like consciously making an effort to say, hey, I appreciate that about you, because I was trying to be valuable to him. It's just truly, I was like, oh, I really like that. You know, whenever he's, you know, drumming on something, it's just that's just a tiny little example. But yeah.
And I got the impression that you weren't telling me that to try to appease me or something like that. You surprisingly seemed to genuinely appreciate that, which was one of the first times that I had heard that, at least outside of music circles. So everyone watching too, for the 100 people watching live, oh my gosh, in the first 5 minutes, don't forget to like the video. Let us know what it is about your man or the man you're interested in that you appreciate, that you can see in him and appreciate him. Probably something I didn't know that was the only person that's ever appreciated that about you. I just learned that right now. It's so amazing. Yeah. So what can you see in him that, you know, most people don't see? It's really important. And this will make sense as we go throughout this. We're going to kind of start general and get more specific. So are you ready for number 2? Yeah. The second thing was that he sees you as a good team member, a good partner, and really a good friend or a best friend is kind of optimal. If he sees you as somebody whom he trusts and somebody whom he could share anything with without fear or concern about how it might be taken, or whether it would be kept in confidence or anything like that. If you kind of know the characteristics of a best friend. I think generally my experience has been that in my own life and the people in my family and people who are close to me, that's generally been the case, that if you ask them, including your spouse, who would you name as your best friend, they would say, oh, my spouse. And I think generally that tends to indicate that, you could have something that really lasts, something that
I love that. I mean, not that you can't have like a best girlfriend or he has male friends, but it's like that level of respect and I think trust in each other that's really crucial. Right. Yeah. And just a good team member. It's just occurred to me, these really go both ways. Like, this is something you want to look for in a man too. I know something that stood out to you, about you, to me, was just like, I trust him to follow through on what he says he's going to do. Think about a team member that you work with or something. If you feel like you're last on their priority list, that's not going to be a good team member in life. I hear from so many women who are kind of feeling strongly attached to a man who just pulls away all the time. They make one kind of misstep and the guy just starts acting distant and things like that. It's like, that kind of guy is not going to be a good partner, a good team member for all the ups and downs of life. So you want to make sure, that's why I wanted to share those 5 things at the beginning. Make sure his energy is coming towards you. Make sure he is acting like an amazing, friend and partner and team member to you as well.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say on that one? Or you want to move on to
No,
number 3?
I mean, I think the third one kind of goes along with that, which is that he feels like he can be vulnerable with you. You feel like you can be vulnerable with each other. I think, feeling like there's trust and that you can open up is really important. And I feel like with us, one of the things that I noticed is that I always feel like whatever I say to you actually matters to you. It really is something that you listen to, and it has some impact. I mean, not that every single thing is a monumental, that you have to have some take some action or change your life or something. But I mean, I think everything that we talk about, at least it resonates with you. You respond. You have some opinion about it, and that's, I think, important. And I think one of the things that enables that probably is the fact that you're generally, I think, naturally kind of coming from a place of feminine energy, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I think and this could go either way. I mean, depending on if maybe, you're with more of a feminine energy guy or has, he tends to be more in his feelings. I'd love to hear your experiences with this, but typically as the woman, as feminine energy partner, you sometimes have to go first. Meaning, have you guys ever tried to get a guy to open up by like trying to pull something out of him that he's not at a place that he's ready to share. If you've ever tried that, you know it doesn't work. Often you have to go first. You have to share and be vulnerable, obviously in baby steps. On the first date, you don't want to show up and tell your sob stories or your biggest fears necessarily, but you can open up first in small ways, and then you see if he accepts you, if he seems to really like you, if that doesn't scare him off. That's, in my opinion, what makes him feel comfortable to open up more. It's not you trying to, ask him a million questions and pull it out of him. It's often you going first as the feminine energy partner. That's been my understanding, but I actually love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that I think, I don't think I've ever experienced a case where you have tried to, ask a whole series of questions or something to try to extract information. I think, you really facilitate that feeling of trust, and that enables me to share things because you are very receptive, and you do open up and provide that kind of sense of safety, I guess.
Yeah, it's just occurring to me right now. We try to not talk about this too much beforehand, so it's just like natural and spontaneous. So I think this was probably the biggest turning point in our relationship. Like, I remember this one particular night, we were both just like super vulnerable. It was pretty early on, but I feel like that deepened the intimacy and the connection to a point to where there was kind of like no turning back after that. Right?
Yeah.
Do you remember what I'm talking about? Yeah. I feel like we just both felt comfortable opening up, and it just like opened the floodgates. And I feel like we just got a lot closer from there on out. So yeah, I think that's really important. What are your guys' experience? Do you have a hard time being vulnerable? Has that been met with resistance in the past? Maybe do you need some ways to do that? If you have questions, let us know in the chat. Every time I'm looking around, I'm just looking at the chat, the time, the viewers. So yeah, are you ready for number 4?
Yeah. Number 4 is that he feels like he can be successful in making you happy. And I think this is important because if he feels like he's constantly fighting an uphill battle where he's never able to make you happy, I think, most guys and just people in general, I think, like to feel like they are able to succeed at something that in a healthy relationship they should hopefully be striving for. They want to see you happy if it's a successful relationship. So I think that if they feel like it's just never enough, and there's nothing that they can do to really adequately make you happy, that will tend to cause them to feel defeated, I think. And I think with you, I mean, there are several examples of things that I feel like are little things that I can do sometimes that help, make you feel happy, that makes me then in turn feel happy to be able to do those. I know just sometimes when I will come home later from work, there's barely enough time to do much before it gets dark outside, at least, through most of the year. And just being able to go on a walk outside for a half an hour or an hour in the evening, I know is something that, we'll talk and be able to kind of unwind. Yeah. And I know that's something that you appreciate, and seems to genuinely make you happy. And I enjoy doing that because I know that I get that response too. Yeah. It does. So you want to look for this in a man as well, right? Like, it's not like you're just like, okay, well, I can't have needs. I have to be really easy to be made happy. It's not that. Go back to the first 5 things I shared. You want to be with a guy who wants to make you happy and meet your needs. And I think when you're with the right person, it just doesn't take much. I mean, this goes both ways, in the sense that I ask you all the time, like, I feel like you do so much for me. And I'm like, I'll probably never get over this programming of feeling like I have to do something back to like reciprocate. So I'm always like, what can I do to make your life better? What can I do to make you happy? And his answer is always the same. I ask him probably every single day. You say, what do you say? What is your answer to that? If I say like, what can I do to make your life better or something? Generally something along the lines of, I just want to see you happy. Yeah. Or you don't have to do anything. Yeah. I don't know if I'll ever get it out of my system that I have to do something because he does so much, but you're not looking for me to like do something right back for you. It's just that probably that feminine joy, being able to receive that, showing appreciation, things like that. Yeah. It's not that you don't do anything. It's just that the things that you do as a matter of course are the things that, make me happy. And I think that if there are those things that you tend to do for each other naturally, and you make each other happy, that's probably a good sign that there's potential for longevity, and that he could see this being somebody whom he'd want to spend a lot of time with, because it doesn't take a lot of energy. If it's something that he has to expend a lot of additional energy beyond what he would sort of naturally, along the lines of what he would naturally be thinking and wanting to do, that probably is going to be difficult to sustain.
Yeah, we talked about this in our last live stream. It was a long time ago. It was New Year's Eve, going into the beginning of this year. The idea that we were kind of busting the myth that you have to constantly come up with new things all the time, or a guy's going to get bored and lose interest. It's just simply not true. I think when you're with the right person, who you are is enough. I mean, it goes back to everything I've been saying for years. You know, who you are is enough. With the right guy, he's going to fall in love for who you are, not these things you constantly do. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. You guys have questions about that or anything, let us know. We'll get to them at the end. And are you ready for I guess we're on the last one, number 5, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the fifth one is that you are responsive, not reactive. And that's one of the things that from the very beginning of our relationship, I really noticed about you. And I think that's really important because it's difficult when you feel like something that you say may be taken immediately personally. You feel like you kind of always have to walk on eggshells and watch how you word things. And I think, your first response is usually to really try to understand what I'm saying. And I think that was one of the things that was made it much easier for me to talk to you and want to have conversations at length. I know, I think there was one example that we were talking about where, oftentimes there can be an event that happens where one of the people are triggered, and it's kind of how you deal with that situation that could either go down a really kind of negative path where you both are aggravated and maybe combative, or it can be very easily diffused. And I think we were talking about how we were preparing to go on a hike one day, and I was running behind, and it was entirely my fault. There was something that I was doing that was, taking longer. We were getting ready to go. I wasn't quite ready yet. And you made a comment, something about, what time it was, or are you ready to go in 5 minutes or something? And, we're going to be late.
People,
we were meeting people, and and I said, I know, it's entirely my fault. And I didn't realize that the way that came off, I genuinely was saying, it's not your fault. It is my fault. I realized that, but it came off as, I think, sort of confrontational. I think you
thought you were being sarcastic,
yeah.
like, oh, everything's my fault or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
And so that like triggered me a little bit, like, right? I can't remember. It's so hard to think of something where, but I think are these examples helpful, or you guys want to just stick to giving advice? Just let us know in the chat. It's kind of fun coming up with these examples. I can't remember what happened next, but I do remember feeling like, was he just being sarcastic right then? Was he like snapping back at me?
Well, I at the time, I think you didn't really say much of anything. You just kind of let me finish getting ready. We got in the car, and then you said something about, how you had kind of felt triggered or something. And we talked it out, and it wasn't until then that I even realized that you had taken it in a different way than I had intended it. But because we talked about it and you didn't, snap back at me or something like that.
Start a fight right there in the moment. Yeah.
It turned into nothing. I mean, we, probably talked about it for a couple minutes in the car, and that was the end of it.
There was a better understanding. I think it really comes down to, if you're with a really good guy, I mean, actually these go both ways too. For all the men watching, I know I have some men watching my channel now for advice in their own relationships, giving your partner the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
Like, I always give him the benefit of the doubt, because I know that he has my best interest at heart. Always. I know he's always thinking about me and my needs and the best interest for the two of us. So, have you guys ever been with someone who just brings out the absolute worst in you, or everything they say triggers you and there's a lot of conflict and fighting? This is kind of the opposite of that. Like, I just naturally give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, just like I know you do for me too. I don't say everything perfectly all the time. Far from it. Right. But I think this being responsive proactive. Responding is a feminine energy quality, not reactive,
Right.
not taking everything, we need to work this out right now because,
Right.
starting some fight and where things can escalate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that a good example? Okay, good. People like the examples. I think that was really good. So responsive, not reactive. Don't immediately jump to taking things personally, making him wrong, right? There's, I think, so much value in choosing the right time to like bring things up as well. If if you need to take a minute, digest it. I think it was like once we were in the car driving to where we were going, I think I said, yeah, I think I at first I felt a little triggered, but I know that, you weren't trying to be mean to me or anything like that. Like it was it was literally just a misunderstanding. He was saying, oh no, it is my fault that we're late. And that was it. But that could have gone so wrong. It's so interesting how if you just give the guy the benefit of the doubt, assume that he's on your side. Right.
And I mean, this goes back again to what you had said at the beginning too, that, this obviously doesn't mean that all guys are, always in the right or
so true.
This is assuming that this is a guy who is, worthy of your attention. He's coming from a good place and he has your best interests at heart.
Yeah.
And
if you're not with a guy like that, that's a problem. You want to take a look at that. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to recap these really quick and then we'll get to that bonus tip?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing is, that he is able to feel like you understand him and that you appreciate things about him, maybe that other people don't, or other people may not even see. The second thing is that you're a good team member, partner, possibly best friend. The third thing is that he can be vulnerable with you, that he feels comfortable and that there's a relationship of trust. The fourth thing is that he knows that he can make you happy. He feels like he can achieve that without going way out of his way or doing something that he doesn't even know how to do. The fifth thing is that you are responsive and not reactive.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the 5 things. We have some more people joining. So thanks for recapping that. And what is that bonus tip that we wanted to talk about? You said this in a podcast episode. You guys know we have a podcast. I have one. We actually both have. Tom has his own as well on VoiceWeb, totally free. I'll include a link to download that. Actually, it's already there. I think that's the first link in the description of this video, the first or second. And you said something that I'd never heard you say before about how you knew that I was a person of value. You knew I was a quality person, the kind of person you would want to commit to. I'd love to hear you share that here too.
Yeah, sure. It's always difficult to break down exactly how you perceive certain things about a person. I mean, how do you tell that a person is angry or happy or something before they even say a word? There are a lot of expressions that you can kind of read, and body language and so forth. So there was a great degree of that that came across to me, I think, because of the simple fact that you are high value, and you can't pretend to be something that you don't believe yourself. So I think it started with that. There are some examples, I think, of things that you did that were for you important and that helped convey your value, and that you were aware of your value. I think, and the very first thing I think probably was that you had suggested that we talk on the phone before our first date. As most people know, we met online, and that isn't necessarily for everyone. It's not even that common, but you had asked if we could, before we met in person, if we could talk for a few minutes on the phone. And I think, you felt like that would probably improve the chances that we actually both showed up on the date, and that like I'm a human being, and some basic things like that. And then I think it also gave me the sense in those first few minutes of conversation too, that by the way that you spoke, that you were open, and that you were interpretive, and that you understood things. You had some, I think, reasonable caution when proceeding on a first date with a total stranger. So those are some things that to me, stood out as okay. This is a person who is aware of the world, aware of her place and knows kind of what her expectations are, standards are, I guess. And you did what I think was important to you, which was talking on the phone before we met, even though that may not be for everybody.
Yeah. So I don't think it was the fact that I said, let's talk before. I didn't say it like that. Do you guys want to know exactly what I said word for word? We can kind of try and remember. That's a really good example though. It's not the fact that I said, I want to talk on the phone before we meet up. I think it was probably, the fact that that's something that was important to me. So I just expressed that. And I think the way I did that, or correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember exactly, but okay. I didn't say, just to let you know, I will not meet up with a man before I talk to him on the phone, or that certainly wasn't written in my profile or anything. He had set up a date, I think, through the app, I think let's say it was for that Saturday evening. And so it was earlier in the week. I said, great, that works for me. That time on Saturday works for me. And it would feel good to chat on the phone just for a couple minutes sometime between now and then, if that works for you. Was that how I said it?
Yeah. Something along those lines.
So it wasn't, so it wasn't this overextension of my boundaries out. Just to let you know, I expect this, or I don't meet up with men unless this is in place. I was like, great, that would be amazing. Cause that would be like kind of making him wrong for not suggesting a phone call himself.
Right.
I said, yeah, it would feel really good to meet you on Saturday. And if you get a chance between now and then, if you want to chat on the phone for just a few minutes, that's something that would feel good to me. And that was it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there are other things too. I think what you had said in that podcast episode was, I knew that you had boundaries and I knew that you had high standards, but it's not something you had to come out and state. I didn't have to sit you down before you did anything and go, these are my boundaries. Here are my standards. Here are my list of requirements for you to have a chance with me. That would be like putting your boundaries on the outside, like a wall that you build up around yourself. I think I trusted myself and trusted my boundaries, and that's what allowed me to be open and receptive and warm to him and, to anyone that shows up on the outside, so that he could actually come close and see who I was.
Right.
I think you talked about something too, about how if you feel the need to like list out your standards kind of upfront, it signals a lack of trust.
Yeah.
I believe you mentioned too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it can convey, a little bit of a lack of trust in yourself.
Yeah.
Because, it's sort of like why people, when you write a note, you write a note to remind yourself of these things that you don't want to forget. And it's sort of akin to that you're sort of writing this note to this person, to this guy, saying, these are the things that I expect, sort of to try to ensure that those things are observed. And it sort of can convey that you don't internally trust yourself to be able to stay away from or get out of situations that don't feel good to you. And I think I knew with you that your openness was actually one of the things that conveyed that sense to me that you were high value, because you weren't approaching with a naive openness. It wasn't that you weren't, that you were just bubbly and open and had, were unaware of the potential, I guess, dangers or something of a first date with a stranger from, miles away and stuff like that. You were open because you conveyed a sense of trust in yourself and confidence that you knew that you wouldn't allow yourself to be in a situation that you didn't want to be in. And
so true. I love that. I think that's so important. I mean, there's been multiple examples of that. Another thing he said the other day, I don't think we've shared this anywhere. He's like, I knew that we lived about an hour apart when we first started dating, right? Before we moved in, we got engaged and all that stuff. He said, I knew that I would be driving to you for the first date. There would be no meeting halfway. You weren't going to come meet me in the middle. You certainly weren't going to come all the way up here. How did he know that? That's not something I had on my profile. It's certainly something I didn't state that to him. I didn't have to say anything like that. It's just an energy and a vibe. So I think that kind of this is probably a topic for a whole nother video. Is this we have a video on boundaries that we haven't published yet that's going to be really important. We'll go more in depth on this. But yeah, I think trusting yourself, being open and seeing what he does all on his own without this constant prompting or trying to steer things in the right direction. And then of course, talking about your preferences along the way is super important. Talking about your feelings, seeing what he does with that information.
Right.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what do you guys think about this? You want to get to some questions? I know we want to try and keep it to 30 minutes and we're at 30 minutes right now. So do you mind taking a couple questions? Or, okay, let's see. I had one, there was one about that example saying, did you let him know how it made you feel? And yes, I did. Yeah, it wasn't like right immediately in the moment, but once because we were rushing, trying to get going. Once we were in the car driving to the place where we were going to meet some people to go hiking, I said, I felt a little triggered back there when you said, I guess it's all my fault. And that's how we talked about it. But it wasn't this explosive thing in the moment. I waited a few minutes for us to get going. Then of course I brought it up. Yeah. So this isn't about stuffing your feelings down.
No.
Never talking about, it's important to talk about some of these things, right?
Yeah. And I think it's probably worth noting too, that as I recall from that, I think I sensed that there was something off. I mean, I could tell that there was something bothering you too. So I don't even know how that conversation was initiated, but I don't think we've ever just let something fester and where we know that there's something wrong. We always talk.
Oh yeah, always. I don't think there's ever been a time where we haven't talked to it. But I mean, Tom is somebody who wants to know how I'm feeling. Like he facilitates my feeling. It's important to him. If there's a misunderstanding or something like that, like he doesn't want to wait. He doesn't want to like go in his cave. Like he wants to work it out. Like I chose a man who doesn't back away from conversations like that. So I think that's a really important quality in a partner, I think, right? It's really important. I think even yesterday when you came home from work, you were like, I feel like something's a little off. Is everything okay? And I was just a little tired and irritable. It was just my own issue. But then we like went for a walk and he wants to know how I'm feeling. The right guy's going to want to do that. He's not going to be scared off by your emotions, right?
Yeah. And I appreciate too, the fact that you're willing to open up and talk about things fairly readily too. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about, being able to feel vulnerable with each other and open up. It often takes you going first. And I've always felt that, it doesn't take, you don't retreat either. You don't require a lot of prompting to draw things out. I mean, you're open and will express what's on your mind too.
Yeah, it's important to do that. So none of my work is ever about stuffing your feelings down or playing some sort of game. That's another thing too. I know you mentioned about how you knew I was a quality person. You just could tell that there was no games. I was super straightforward right from the start, right? Is there anything you want to say on that?
I think that's something that that genuineness that you portrayed right from the beginning was something that I also noticed that, I don't think that, I mean, this is obviously kind of key in the early stages of a relationship as well. I don't think that most guys they may play games for a short period of time in a short-term relationship, but if they're getting the sense that person is the type of person who would be kind of constantly playing games, that'll be really tiring for any long duration. So that's probably not likely to lead to the guy thinking that this is somebody whom he'd like to spend potentially the rest of his life with. So I know that with you, that was something that to me stood out, that, you were very responsive with your text messages and phone calls. And, I always got the sense that you weren't intentionally waiting to get back to me for some defined period of time to try to, affect some response from me or something. I just knew that you just responded when you got the message and were available and wanted to respond. And I was, and then I did the same thing. I didn't feel like I had to try to figure out the game that you were playing and, the tactics that were involved. And
so important. It's so funny. It's just what I always talk about, right? Like forget the games, just trust yourself and be open and see what a guy does. Like he showed me right away. He was a guy, he was responsive. He showed up, he followed through. He did what he said he was going to do. So, then there was no reason for, just with the right guy, there's not going to be any reason to feel like you need to hold certain parts of yourself back or anything like that. In terms of, your feelings, what you want, your opinions, preferences, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so hi to everyone watching. There's just so many amazing comments. Elise, hi, Lisa's the one. She's a listener on our Voice Web podcast too. Lise, go check out her channel. She did a wedding gift for us where she played piano and sang. And remember, like a week before our wedding, I cried harder than I had cried in so long. It was so beautiful, so touching. It's so great to see you here. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's see. Can I still be valuable in his eyes? We just broke up. I think this would be a good time to talk about the fact that, we're not saying that one person is more inherently valuable. Every human being is super valuable, but this is like how valuable he sees as a person in his life that he wants to be like a life partner with. Anything you want to say on that?
Right. Yeah. If you think, everybody has a lot of categories of people in their lives. They have friends, possibly family and colleagues and you name it, and if you are somebody whom he is dating or has some short-term relationship with, and he's trying to figure out, is this potentially a long-term relationship, these are the things that may convey your value in the sense of how he perceives you as a life partner, not as a person, not as a human being, but as a partner for him in his own life.
Yeah. So if they just broke up, it depends. If he broke up with you and said he doesn't see you as someone he wants to commit to, you don't hold that place in his heart. Right. If you broke up with him, there's so many different scenarios here. Anything you have to say about someone who just broke up? I know it's not really our wheelhouse, but I did my last live stream with Matthew Coast. If you're looking to get back together, will help a lot. It's called 7 Things That Destroy Your Chances of Getting Him Back, especially if you're in no contact. It's just the last live stream I did. You guys can check that out. Anything else you want to say on that?
I think, the things that you experienced while you were together would still potentially resonate with him. So that may be, not necessarily, it may not necessarily be required that you're actually together at the time for those things to still be resonating, and for him to perhaps realize that you actually were the person who kind of holds all these characteristics. And
yeah, that's great. Yeah, similar. It's not really our get your ex back is not our thing. I like to just choose the right person from the beginning, and then a lot of these problems that people experience don't really come up. Similar from Alyssa Marie, what to do if it was a great guy you were with. He said he doesn't want to get back together. He wants to do everything like before. Yeah, he's being really honest with you about where he sees you in his life. I'm sure he would be happy to take all the relationship benefits. I'm sure he'd be happy to sleep with you, spend time with you, have that companionship. But that doesn't mean that he's straightforward, in a really straightforward way, saying he doesn't want to get back together. So you want to believe him. And if what you want is a committed relationship, don't continue giving him those benefits. If he's not willing to provide that right now, that's my quick answer.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add there?
Yeah. I think, you often have talked about it, and I think it's really important. It's not a huge point to make, but I think, guys will tend to do and say really what they want. They're not trying to mislead.
Mm-hmm.
So, generally I think you can probably take, face value what they're saying and what their actions are to indicate where they want to go with things.
Yeah, he's being really straightforward. Believe him. If a guy tells you he's not ready for a relationship, he doesn't want to get back together, believe him. Don't try and change his mind. Don't use these things to try to change his mind. Just move on. Luann says, I keep attracting the same kind of men available at first, then they decide they're not ready for a relationship. How do I handle this? My question would be, I wish I could open up your mic and talk to you personally. I feel like I could help so much, but what do you do when they tell you you're not ready for a relationship? What choice do you make in that moment? Do you say, okay, and are you grateful that they showed you this early on that they weren't the one for you? Or are you allowing this to trigger you and cause you to have all this emotional energy, this emotional charge around it, which will then keep you on this level where you're stuck attracting the same kind of man? For anyone in this situation, no matter who you're attracting, if you can just be grateful for the men who fade away, say they're not ready for a relationship, disappear, back off, start acting distant, just be happy. They're showing you that they're not the right one. If you can embody that feeling of gratitude in advance, when the wrong people show you that they're the wrong people, you will attract someone different much more quickly. I've certainly found. Anything you want to add there?
Yeah, no, I think your advice is great. I think, generally there's no conversion process that really happens. I think, maybe extremely rarely you could find some examples, but I think generally that's not the case. If they're like we said previously, if they're whatever they're saying is probably able to be taken pretty much at face value, and their actions are in accordance with what they really want in their life.
Yeah. So what are you engaging with emotionally? Are you allowing this to really get you down and trigger you? I mean, of course, if you feel disappointed when a guy pulls away, like, that's totally fine. Feel your feelings, but don't allow that to cause you to develop beliefs about all men. If you're starting to tell yourself all men come on strong at first, but then they're not ready. If that's the story you're telling, you're going to build momentum and attract more of that. Right.
I think it's really difficult to imagine when you're in that situation how this is a benefit and how you can have a feeling of gratitude around it, like you said. But I think it is a very good way to handle it, because it kind of helps you to not only move forward, but also kind of learn lessons along the way too.
Wow, I know you probably can't see these, but that's amazing. He said that right then. Amanda said, for the first time, thanks to his breadcrumbing, the so many lessons he taught me, I now know what I do not want, and I won't accept anything less. Amazing. That's what we're going for. Oh, thank you guys so much. You're so sweet. Women vulnerability encourages the men. Okay, how about this one? Boundaries in a non-committed relationship. What is appropriate? And what about when you become more than just friends with more serious feelings? Yeah, we have a whole video on boundaries that I keep saying I'm going to publish, then other things keep coming up. Do you want to talk a little bit about this? What's your first I know you had something you had said is that, being someone who's not in this field, Tom works in an entirely different field. He was surprised at how often this word boundaries was being used, and the idea of having to state boundaries. I'd love if you want to quickly talk about that. I think it's really interesting.
The aspect of the non-committed relationship. I mean, I don't know that necessarily should have an impact on whether or not boundaries or I'll say standards are understood and respected. Just because you're not in a committed relationship doesn't mean that your values change. If a guy in a non-committed relationship with you isn't observing those, then I think you have to decide whether or not that's somebody that you like to continue to see. Committed or not committed, are kind of the same when it comes to your standards, I think.
That's a really good point.
I mean, I know if more serious feelings come into play, then your sense of the relationship or how you're seeing that partnership may change, but
I think keeping with what we've been talking about, strong, trusting yourself on the inside, open, vulnerable, receptive on the outside. So let's say this guy, I don't know more details about your situation. Let's say he goes to make a move on you. Let's say he goes to take things forward physically, and you're not really comfortable with that because you're not in a committed relationship. If that's a boundary you have for yourself, saying something like, this feels so good, I love being with you, whatever's happening there. And that's something I really feel comfortable doing within the context of a committed relationship. What do you think? Right? Rather than, just so you know, I will not sleep with any guy unless I'm in an exclusive relationship, but be curious, be like, that would be amazing. I'm really looking forward to that, and that's something that I feel comfortable doing once I really get to know someone and we're in a committed situation. What are your thoughts on that? And be curious and see what he says. I mean, but if it's been like months and it's like a non-committed relationship, that might be a bit of a red flag too, right?
Yeah.
Because generally men know what they want pretty early on, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we've often tried to figure out kind of the timeline for when men should have an idea of what the relationship consists of in their mind and where it's headed. And you know, there are often different ranges of time given depending on to whom you talk, but it seems like it's not multiple years.
Yeah. When did you know, not to put you on the spot, if you know, if you feel comfortable, when did you know that you wanted to be in a committed relationship with me? Was it like, I mean, I'll just let you answer that. I don't want to influence you.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we've tried to figure it out in retrospect now, I mean, I think it was somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks.
6 and 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we had a lot of extensive conversations by that point. I mean, just getting to know each other, talking about life in general. And so I felt like I knew you well enough by that point. And we were resonating well enough by that point that I didn't feel like there should be anything that would be uncovered after that point that would drastically change my mind. I felt like I knew who you were as a person.
Yeah. Love it. So if there's so much we don't know here, if this has been going on, if you've been dating him for 6, 7, 8+ months and he doesn't know what he wants, there's just something about that doesn't feel good, right? Wish there was this video a long time ago. It would have made all the difference. Are there videos you can refer me to give another chance? I'm struggling. If this is the one who's broken up with a man, I can't remember, but I think it is the last live stream I did with Matthew Coast on how to restart your relationship. I think it was called 7 Subtle Things That Destroy Your Chances of Getting Back Together, if you're in no contact, especially. So for anyone in no contact, those tips will really help you no matter what your situation is, actually. Oh my gosh, you guys are so sweet. He's explaining these points perfectly. You guys are so sweet. I know you get embarrassed with compliments. So it's so funny because all these other relationship coaches I interview, they love compliments. They can't, and Tom's like so modest, he gets shy. So I won't put too many more on there. Let's see. 3 important questions to ask on the first date. I have lots of videos on my channel. If you just type my name and questions, I have like all these videos with all these questions. Do you have any like quick questions off the top of your head somebody could ask right off the bat?
Wow, that's it. I don't have anything on the tip of my tongue for that.
It's hard.
Yeah,
to say.
It's hard to. Some people kind of tend to want to interview somebody on the first date. I think you tend to not necessarily get a lot out of the actual content of what people say. At least this is my own personal experience. You get a lot more out of how they say it and the things that they choose to talk about on their own, rather than the facts that they give you when you ask them certain questions.
Yeah. It's so funny to think about our first date. How we haven't talked about this too much before, how the conversation kind of ran out of things to talk about. We were both like, should we even really, which is funny because fast forward a couple weeks later, we would be up till 3, 4 in the morning talking and talking and talking. So sometimes you might just be nervous. He might just be nervous. It might just be a little awkward. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But asking about things that are important to him, asking how he likes to spend his free time. How would he spend his free time if he, didn't have to worry about money or work or something like that, kind of gets to the core of his values. But I think what you said is perfect. It's not the specific questions, but it's kind of like the way you're approaching it. Yeah. I think you said, did you say something about our first date, how you didn't feel like I was interviewing you? Or like trying to ask a list of factual questions. Yeah, I mean, I remember, our first date was kind of a bit of a struggle, really, to like come up with enough to say. I mean, we were sort of like, all right, I don't know what we do here now, but it is surprising how much we then talked about for hours and hours at length after that, and I don't recall that you asked me any specific. I mean, maybe a few, but not enough to stand out in my mind now. Like, my job or my upbringing or where I
grew up or anything, like just the typical fact. I don't recall you really ever asking me anything.
Yeah, it's more like experiencing the moment, moment by moment, rather than like, here's this checklist I have. Let me see if he can fit this box of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to
we should do a video on our first date. But you guys know how I talk about if you don't have the greatest history in your love life, and a guy comes along and he fits into those old patterns, and there's crazy chemistry and lots of sparks of attraction right off the bat, that's a red flag. And with the right person, it just kind of feels comfortable. It might not be the crazy fireworks, but the crazy sparks of attraction will come later. You know, I mean, it was only a couple weeks into where we were like, wow, like we're soulmates, you know, but on that first date, had we not seen each other again after that first date, I would have been like, I don't think either one of us would have been devastated.
Right.
So to take some time for these things to develop, I would say, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like what you said too about, you know, it's not about trying to fit somebody into this box. I mean, if you're comparing against the checklist, that's probably not a good place to start. You know, I think your ability to perceive things on the basis of the way the person talks and what he chooses to talk about, and I think that's a lot more instructive than maybe the specific things that he would respond to.
Yeah. Like, I knew that you were a total gentleman, like so respectful. You didn't have to tell me that. Like, every guy is going to say, oh, I'm honest, and they're going to describe themselves the way they want. You could just feel it. You could feel it by the way that you were, how you acted, how you were treating me and other people. It's more of a vibe. I feel like we just like gave a really long answer to that question. Hopefully we answered that question. I don't even know if we answered that. Okay, men do need to feel feel important.
We failed to provide any
questions.
Any questions.
We'll have to think about that one maybe before. Was that like the worst answer ever? Angie says, men do need to feel important. They take pleasure in knowing they make a woman happy. Like women, men need affirmation. Yeah, love it. Okay, good. Yes, I'm so glad this was helpful. Mia says, does he respect you? Does he care? Will he be yours for life? Great questions to ask about the man you're seeing. And let's see. Oh, you guys are so welcome. I'm so glad you enjoyed this. Okay, we answered this one from Brenda already. And then here's some new ones down here. It's been a while since I've done one of these like that. Okay, let's see. We might have gotten to all of them. Oh, and a bunch just jumped up, actually. We said we were going to keep this to 30 minutes. So we might just take a couple more and then close out. Let's see. Oh, the first date was, we met for dinner. He had to drive about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. So we made it dinner. So it was, you know, yeah. But I think coffee date is totally fine for a first date.
Yeah, I mean, generally, that actually was something that was a little bit of a cause for concern for me. I didn't know whether that was too much to be committing to. I think, you know, we had kind of mutually agreed that we would have dinner, just owing to what time it was and how great the distance was and stuff. But yeah, generally, I think, I mean, for first date, the shorter the better. You can usually figure out whether there's any future, at least, you know, any future dates or anything within often a few minutes of meeting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Even when you said, when I asked for a phone call, you said you could tell that my objective just to feel out the vibe had been satisfied within a couple minutes. Right. It's like we didn't have to talk for hours and hours before meeting up. Okay, then Ellie says, did you date on a regular basis? Did you see each other every day? We didn't see each other every day. How did it go? We saw each other on weekends first. He works very long hours. Up here, we lived about an hour away, so we first saw each other weekends. Then it turned into like...
Yeah, we saw each other for, on average, a couple of days a week, just really over the weekends for at least a few weeks. And then that kind of grew to 3 or 4 days a week, maybe. But we didn't live close together, so we couldn't see each other in person every single day, not for quite a while. And yeah, I think the thing is that this was also during the pandemic, a lot of it. So at that time, it was easier to spend, you know, more condensed but longer durations together. We'd spend, you know, a whole day together because there wasn't necessarily a lot to do other than to go for walks or hikes or watch movies or things like that. So they tended to not be like a dinner date where it only was a 3-hour date and then we saw each other the next day and stuff. So it was for fairly extended periods of time, but not that many days a week.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Similar, these questions about boundaries are so good. What if he tells you you are his everything? He wants to be with you forever and he wants you to move in, but I believe in marriage. He hasn't said anything about marriage. Yeah, similar. So rather than going, just to let you know, I will not move in with a man unless marriage is on the table. I just go, oh my gosh, it feels incredible to be asked to live together. And this is feeling so good. And, something you might not know about me is that I really want to get married and settle down one day. And I wouldn't feel comfortable moving in with someone unless I knew that we were on the same page before taking such a big step like that. Something like that? Does that sound about right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I say that to you? Did it maybe something like that?
I don't think we really had to have that conversation. I think we kind of ended up on the same page after we had some of the earlier conversations about what was important to us, where we were headed, what sort of things we thought we wanted in our lives. But,
so if he's asking you to move in, so just let him know. Don't be afraid to say, don't move in with a guy if you don't know whether or not you're on the same page, right? Make sure you know for sure. If that means getting engaged first, knowing for sure what the timeline is without a shadow of a doubt, right? Don't get yourself into a situation where you're going to have to back yourself out somehow.
Right.
Make the smart choices up front, would be my opinion on that, right? Let's see. A lot of questions like this. What to do if he says he loves you, but I can't commit? I'm not sure about myself. He has a drug issue. Oh my goodness. Just get away from a guy like that. If he's just the bottom line is if he says he can't commit, believe him. Okay. Oh my gosh. How did it get to be an hour already? Let me just take a couple more. There's so many questions. What about this one from Jennifer? I've been out with this guy a lot. He told me he loves me. I haven't heard from him in a couple days. He does have 3 jobs. What do you think that means? I get questions like this all the time. Maybe this would be a good one to end on. What are your thoughts on that? Tom is one of the busiest people I've ever met. And he always made it a point to call me on the nights we didn't see each other. I mean, once we were in the dating process a little bit, like later on, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, if he says he loves you and haven't heard from him in a couple days, I'll let you give this as your perspective on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, you've received questions like this before, and we've talked about it. I think it's about priorities. That's not to say that if he does in fact have 3 jobs, that's possibly consuming a huge amount of time. So it is understandable that it could be really challenging. But I think if a relationship with somebody is really important, if that person is really important and he sees that with a future, then he will prioritize accordingly to make the time for the things that he really values. I kind of find it difficult sometimes that somehow people don't have time for some things but have time for others, and I think can usually find if for me, knowing, when we were first dating, knowing that I felt like there was a future and that I really enjoyed all the time that I was spending with you, that was something that I didn't want to let go. That was something that I cared enough about that, that was more important to me and would, have a potential impact on my life and future for the rest of my life, potentially. I mean, after we had known each other for a couple of months or 3 months or whatever, that was something that I would have started to, prioritize above everything else, because, there are only so many of those things that it's only so many of those life experiences, and there are very few people that you would meet who would have that kind of an impact and whom you care enough about, that if the guy really feels like he's in that situation, he'll do whatever it takes to make that work. I think generally.
Yeah. You said something the other day that I loved. You were like, well, when we first started dating, I was busy, so I wanted to put energy into our relationship and see where it went and kind of put both feet in and see how it was going.
That's a good point too.
Flip.
Yeah.
A lot of people use that as an excuse. Like, well, he's busy, so he can't contact me. You're like, I was busy, so I wanted to put energy into this to see where it was going to go. Right.
Yeah. I think, that's probably worth explaining a little bit, that the thought is that if you have limited time, you don't want to draw that out for months and months trying to figure out whether this is something that, you want to keep going, or a person whom you really like in your life. That constant kind of dragging on and without ever committing consumes a lot of energy, actually. And so I think if it's somebody who's really busy, they would kind of prioritize putting the time and energy into figuring out whether this is a person whom they'd really like to spend the rest of their lives with, or some longer duration of time. And if it's not the right person, then the relationship ends there, and it doesn't drag on forever.
I just love having people know that there are men like this out there who want to prioritize the relationship and don't want to. I saw a question, I can't get to it now. Someone who's been dating for 3 years and it's not defined. It's like, men, if you're truly the one for them and they really feel that, and they feel like they could lose you if they don't, lock you down, or for lack of a better phrase, they're going to make it happen. They're going to know a good thing when they see it, and they're going to make it happen. The right guy makes it happen. That kind of encompasses a lot of things. So we'll just have this be the last one because we're already in an hour. I can't believe we're like double what we said we were going to do. But how did you move past the awkwardness when you ran out of things to talk about on your first date? That's a good question. We should do a whole video just on this, because I think a lot of women are quick to discard a guy because there wasn't like a crazy amount of chemistry and sparks right away.
Yeah.
Because I would say even by our second date, we were having fun. We were talking. Our date was like 4+ hours long. So how do we get past that on the first date? I think we went to a different location, right?
Right. We went to a different location. And I seem to recall that it wasn't until I realized that we were both a little awkward that it made it okay, and that we were able to actually start having more interesting conversation, because until that point, it wasn't really clear why we weren't finding enough to talk about. And it turns out that I think we were both a little reserved. We both didn't volunteer information necessarily. We're both awkward and generally shy. So I think, but it's hard to sometimes figure that out right away. Usually people can kind of perceive that a person is shy or whatever, but you can also come off as cold maybe, and that you're not interested, and those were not true. But it took realizing, like starting to get to know each other just enough that we realized that, okay, it's not that we're not interested. It's not that we're cold. We just are both kind of shy and reluctant to volunteer information. And then I think we started to be able to talk. We realized we had kind of a similar thought process about things. And I don't remember exactly what we started talking about first, but once we kind of latched onto a deeper subject matter, then that was how we ended up in these hours and hours of conversation.
It was, and it wasn't that we were having a bad conversation. It was nice. It was pleasant. It wasn't unpleasant or anything, but we're both kind of awkward people. If you haven't noticed this, everyone knows that about me. And you love that about me. That's something you saw in me right away. And he's like, oh, I get that. I understand her. And that you identified with that as well. Right. So we talked about that in the very first video we published. It's called Men Fall in Love When You Reveal This. And you were saying one of the things you felt that made you fall in love with me was my awkwardness and just the way I am. Right. And that's the right guy's going to fall in love with you for that too. But by the time we got to the second place, I knew, I could just tell I was like, oh, he's having a good time. I could tell you weren't trying to end the date. You were smiling. We were getting to know each other, getting more comfortable. So all of that is to say, give the nice guy a chance. Like, oh my gosh, give if maybe he doesn't light your fire, or maybe, it probably went both ways. Like people, where things didn't work out, if you have it all hooked up in your subconscious mind, where if a man pulls away, you feel the sense of longing for him. And then men who are available, you don't feel sexually attracted to them right off the bat. Give the men who are available a chance and let that chemistry develop. We can say now, I didn't even know this level of passion and chemistry was possible. Like above, like it's just above, it's a whole nother level of consciousness that I didn't even believe was possible. It's like a 20 out of 10 now. But on our first date, the chemistry was what, maybe a 5, 6,
Yeah, I
something.
mean, right. Yeah. It was really difficult to tell, where we stood. And like you said, it wasn't that the conversation was bad or that it was terribly uncomfortable, but I mean, if we had left after the first place that we had stopped and just went on our ways, we probably would have kind of forgotten about the whole thing a week later.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Yeah. So this is give the available nice person who's doing everything right, give it a chance, give it 2, 3 dates, right? Now, if the thought of like kissing him makes you want to throw up, okay, obviously like it's not the right person for you. But I don't know how we got off on this tangent about our first date or anything, but basically just because things aren't like crazy, connected immediately doesn't mean that this isn't your soulmate, your total soulmate that you just could never, dream of living life without once you get to know each other better, I guess. I guess we should probably go because it's over an hour and, yeah, let's see. Oh, you guys are so sweet. Yes, we love you too. Ways to be vulnerable with a guy. I will think about that. And maybe this is a topic for a whole nother video. But this would be good. Yeah. Okay. Would you want to talk about this maybe in our next one? How to connect emotionally by opening up and being vulnerable. I know it can be really difficult. I saw a lot of comments in the chat about how that's difficult for both men and women. So, yes. Okay. Thank you guys so much. You're so sweet. Anything else you want to say before we close out?
No, I don't think so.
I always ask you that and you're like, yeah. I'm used to interviewing people who have stuff that they're trying to sell a book or something. And so they always have something else to say. And Tom's just a regular. We both have podcasts, as I mentioned, on Voice Web. It's totally free. You can use my invite code 5566. And we do a lot of podcast episodes together, really short ones. You can leave me a voice comment. I love Voice Web because you can leave me a voice comment and we'll comment right back and answer your questions. And I can kind of like, connect with you guys more personally than here on YouTube, which I love. So the link to download that and all the information's in the description. Oh, also, you can get my feminine enchantment system for $1 right now. That's a $1 trial that's going on for a limited time. Get your personal questions answered by my top coach for people who like have situations where they need help and they don't want to like put it out here on YouTube for the world to see. Like my top, actually 1 or 2 of my top coaches in there answering questions in a private online forum. That's feminineenchantment.com. I'll include that too. Everything's in the description. And if you guys want us to, yes, 5566. So everyone go download that. And that's the Voice Web app. And if there's any other live streams you'd like us to do, let us know in the comment section after this post. And this was amazing. You guys are so sweet. Thank you so much for staying all the way till the end. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and we will talk to you again soon, hopefully. This was fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye.